process stroke marketing activities with a view to sort of give a snapshot as to what we provide. Now, I think the first thing that we want to focus on is that it is a process, and it's not just about trying to do one thing in isolation. It's about trying to put together a business development approach, and that first and foremost starts with strategy. It's a 5-stage process, so we move from strategy on to actually looking at the wow, why and woo, as we call them. So we've moved away from what the company does and wants to do, its business objectives, its new sales, etc., to the elements that are going to link in terms of, why are people going to buy from you? And that's a key element. Why am I going to buy from you? There are lots of other IT providers out there, or cloud-based solutions, or email providers, yada yada yada. Why would I buy from Quest Cloud Solutions? That then leads to the opportunity to look at both on and offline communication. There are a million things that you can do, waste money on, etc., to try and generate new sales. And obviously what we're trying to do is identify what's going to give the best return of investment to any client-based organisation. So the whole purpose behind the communication is to obviously get noticed, is to be able to prompt some kind of call to action, to get an email open, to have somebody respond positively to a telephone call, etc. So that's a key element of if we're going to use a variety of media, what's going to be the approach that we're going to adopt. And the final element that we apply within our business development process is what we term action analysis, which is where we actually, after we've tried to stimulate action, we actually measure everything that we get involved with in order to be able to review and refine. Because it could well be that the media we're using correct, email is the right thing to do. It's just that we haven't quite got the subject line or the content right. It could be that cold calling is the approach to adopt, but we haven't got the message sorted. Until we start to measure each of these elements in detail, it's very difficult to actually work out what is and isn't working. So let's very quickly just look at each of those elements in detail. So our strategy, we adopt again a 5 process perspective. One of the key elements is to sit down and try and work out what it is you're trying to achieve. What's that equate to in terms of profitability you're looking for, turnover, how many new customers does that entail, etc. When we start looking at customers, what is the ideal profile of a customer? What type of customers do you want? What type of customers definitely do you want to avoid? It's then a question of actually evaluating and monitoring and understanding the product stroke services that you're providing. Is each product aimed specifically at a different type of customer? Is there a type of customer who can buy a variety of products? All of this element is required in order to be able to position and price. Unfortunately, you're in a world where there are lots and lots of competitors, so understanding those competitors, seeing what they're offering, perhaps identifying how much they're charging for them, seeing how they deal with a customer inquiry, etc., are important in order to be able to provide you guys with some differentiation. All of this then means that we need to develop some systems and processes. And for us, that's a key part. It's not just about a single activity. It's about working out what the systems and processes are that can give maximum return on investment. So that was the stage 1, the strategy. The next bit being that the wow, why, and woo. What is it that's going to make you different? Sometimes it's incredibly difficult for us, and we sit down with companies for a long time in order to actually understand, to get the golden nuggets, work out what makes you different. We have worked with companies in the past, and they've said, you know what, we're not even as good as the competitors. But actually, that's a really good point to start saying, no matter how good the marketing is, if you haven't got something unique, then we're going to struggle to try and sell you on a sustainable basis. We term the next stage the mafia offer development. With all of the marketing collateral or approaches or sales approaches, there's got to be something in there that makes the person go, wow, that's an offer I can't refuse. and that's a key element of some of the work that we entail. And then linking that forward so that we've got the ability to find some strong calls to action, things that are going to make the customer who we're trying to work with to actually take some kind of initiative, and then repurposing that and just saying, right, so what's going to be the reason for that intervention? So once we've got the strategy sorted out, the wow, why and woo sorted out, we can then start to just try and work out what it is that we should be running with. And we have two key communication processes that we run with that are very much linked. We have online activities and offline activities. To be honest, the website, we have a specific approach that we've developed over the last 5 years or so called GetSite, is a fundamental tool, because many of these activities, whether it be email or social media or whatever, will always lead to some kind of activity that the customer will take within the web. But it may well be that there are some offline activities, cold calling on the telephone, direct mail, advertising, even face-to-face via networking, etc. But the key element of these is that we will try and measure them and track them and lead these potentially through to the web activity. What we use here is dependent upon what the customer needs to achieve. In a couple of cases, we've been able to do some very highly targeted letters linked with a telephone sales process and avoid other fluff or other elements. But in many cases, where a longer gestation period or more complex sale is required, more material is required in order to communicate those messages effectively. Then that whole process about getting noticed, there is so much marketing communication out there. There is so much poorly designed marketing collateral. We have a three-stage process that starts with the idea generation, taking what are perhaps some very typical messages, identifying the elements that have a customer basis, so coming up with some better ideas, and then turning that into creative to actually create something visual, copy, context that is going to make work. Now the challenge here is that digital design and print design are two very difficult strands. You need to be able to work with both. We have a team in place who, some are specialists on print, some are specialists on digital. It's about whatever is relevant in those instances, so we then design accordingly. And then the final stage, but probably one of the most important, is actually the action analysis. After we've actually implemented some of these elements, and we may have actually implemented some kind of split testing, we measure absolutely everything. Is it email opens? Is it inbound telephone calls? Is it time of gestation from seeing to sale, etc.? We measure everything. We then review. We're then able to feed all of that back in to the stage 4 within the strategy. So let's just have a look at some case study type elements or things that we've done in the past for various clients. Strategy. Now unfortunately this is the most important part, but also the least illustrative without giving client sequence away. Obviously we've got lots of stuff I can talk about, but I can't sort of share within a published domain. But one of the things that comes out of the strategy is working in detail to identify correct positioning. Where are you going to be trying to compete within the marketplace? Identifying these elements of differentiation, looking at the thorny issue of pricing and competition, customer profiling, business objectives. We're not trying to make this wordy or lengthy, but we do want to end up with a marketing plan, a marketing action plan that is going to give us the sequence and activities with which to work in. Some woo, wow and why. Well, here's an example of some work we did with a client that just required a simple direct mail letter in order to talk to the named people, in order to engage with the named people, in order to start some dialogue. Equally, here's something that we did for a client whereby we knew that we didn't want to sell too early, so we produced a very comprehensive buyer's guide and at the same time gave them the ability to do some online calculations. So very, very clear, non-salesy, but very focused material that gained the trust, positioned the company as being authority, and allowed them to move forward. The communication process, quite often, if there's a list that we can work towards, we start with, an email. That email drives people to a website. That website, we're able to monitor the clicks, and we then have people outbound telephoning the people who have made an interest to it. Equally, and here's an interesting element, because one of the things, if we're creating content, sometimes a positive side effect is that we can actually gain some traffic. So rather than us with targeting those people who we have details of, this is very much about people who might be searching for a certain solution. So here we go, this is some live data that was been produced, people searching for Morgan car factory visits, and the article that was actually written actually managed to is still ranking on the first page of Google. Here are some examples. It's not just about saying we're going to do something, it's about doing it differently. So here's an original homepage of a website. An hour after we'd been through a redesign process, we increased the number of page views. So the amount of time a person spent on the site, the amount of pages within the site that they went into. Here's a report cover that the client originally had. After we'd redesigned it, we actually managed to increase the number of downloads significantly of people requesting that information. Same content, just a different way of looking at it. And here's an original form that a client was using to capture data from information, and after we were able to redesign that in the context of their existing site, we increased the number of completions, so the number of data that was gathered. So it's all about doing things to increase awareness. One of the things I spoke about was measurement. All of the activities that we run with, whether it's telephone calls, whether it's any kind of digital activity, even if we're doing direct marketing, direct mail activities, we want to be able to measure what's happening as a result of that activity. And it's only by using analysis tools that we can actually start to make a difference and improve on and refine on what we're running with. And this for us is a key area where we're able to add value to companies by improving the return on investment that they will get from their business development process. That's a whistle-stop tour of the business development process that we apply, and some marketing activities that we run with. There's a full portfolio of client examples on our website, bdolphin.co.uk. I hope this has been of use and look forward to talking further.